Well, the gang's here. And there's Catherine. Hello, Catherine.
Hello.
Nice to see you again. And our gang, David, good to see you again, and Brian, and the usual suspects, Eve and Carol and Barbara, Kelsey, Loretta, Chantel, Jan, Joni, Carrie, Debbie. Uh, oh, how nice to see everyone. Sally, nice to have you here. And everyone's just coming in the room. We were sort of debating if there was something funny with my videos. My video looking okay for everyone? Okay, good. I have a very good connection, but it was just being silly, uh, like me. So we're going to get into our topic pretty soon. I don't know how many of you got to see the newsletter that went out. But I announced in advance the topic of the day, which is how our spiritual lives can enhance and sometimes hurt our relationships. And that could be any kind of relationships, family, neighbors, romantic, whatever. And I think it's actually for me, it's a very juicy and very important topic because spirituality can be so dear and enriching for us as individuals, and yet not always have the results we want when it comes to how we relate to others. So we're going to talk about that. But before we get into that, we have just a couple more minutes in our early stall time to see if anybody would like to greet the group, or if anyone has any questions or something you just want to share before we get rolling.
I have a quick question,
Yes, madame.
unrelated to
Yeah.
spirituality, but for the first time, I got this request that I acknowledge that AI companion features have been enabled in this meeting. What does that mean? AI companion features. Who,
Well,
who, what does that
Garth
mean?
Garth might need to answer that, but I don't actually know what it means. I think it has something to do with on the recording side of it. But Garth, do you know what that means?
Yes, Zoom has implemented some AI features which will help create synopsis of meetings and meeting notes and um, help manage meetings. Anyway, it's really for the, like you said, the kind of the back end users, not for anybody on the call,
Including Jonathan? Who?
including Jonathan. Yes,
Well,
which
it
reminds
doesn't
me,
edit content,
I need to make Jonathan a co-host.
but it wouldn't edit, because there's so much weirdness out there with content being edited and videos being edited. So there would be no content change.
This is admin kind of things, not editing kind of things.
Okay.
It's a fair question. Chantel, something for you?
Yeah, maybe it's out of context, but for me, it's like a spiritual experience. And I started to read your book, Spiritual Experience, and I had a kind of an analogy. I don't know if anybody experienced that. First, when I saw the eclipse, I thought about my spiritual experience. And I've been wondering about it since then. So when I saw the eclipse, the moon passing in front of the sun, and you got the light behind, and you got the darkness in the front. What I want to know is, for years, I had that experience where I go in the dark tunnel and it's dark, but at the end of the tunnel, it's a black circle. And behind that black circle, there is the light, like the eclipse. And I'm trying to get to the light, but it's always black, but the light is behind. So I was wondering if any of you experienced that. What does it mean? It really bothered me. Since I saw the eclipse, I said, yeah, this is my spiritual experience. Like I'm not able to get through the darkness to get to the light behind. So that's my big question.
Ooh, well, I'm not going to answer that right away. I wonder if anyone else would like to respond to that. The image, I believe it's more than a metaphor, but we can also use the word metaphor. Um, and you're saying you can't get to the light?
Yeah, well, while I'm in deep meditation, because when I meditate, obviously I go through the third eye, I enter into that tunnel. Maybe I've already entered the star, the five-pointed star, but I'm not too sure because I know that I go into that cosmic consciousness. But I said, why is it dark and why is it a black dot? And the
Uh-huh.
more I go, it's small and it gets smaller, but then it's always black. But in the back, like the eclipse, there is that light there, that wants to pierce, but it seems to be eternal. It doesn't want, I'm not able to break through it. It's like the pain, I guess you break through the pain. It's the light trying to break through. I wonder if it has a relation to all that, the spiritual experience, the dark and the light.
So I have maybe a surprising comment or answer to that, but I would still welcome if anyone else wants to jump in, if they've seen that or felt that, or just want to comment. Anyone? Because we're all friends here. Joni, go ahead. Sally, by the way, you're friends too, so you're welcome to comment on anything. And typically we just have some small talk at first, then we get into sort of a bit of a program, and then we go back to community sharing. So you're in for a little bit of a journey. Joni.
What I would throw in there, which is what, I set out for 2.5 hours during the eclipse. And yeah, I saw and understand the space that you are in, Chantel. And I, for myself, it was what worked for me was to just focus on my feelings,
Hmm.
to kind of not go into that, the whys and whats, um and just experience it in that moment and know that the feelings I was evoking, that were being evoked by that experience, were um kind of once in a lifetime feelings. And no one can, for me, can answer any question,
Hmm.
because I don't think it's about, it wasn't about answers for me.
Hmm. Nice. Nice, applicable both to the meditation and to the eclipse. Anyone else? Because now it's true. We've sort of, Chantel's opened up both the eclipse and meditative experiences and light and dark. Loretta.
I think the obvious metaphor is that we are in the darkness here in the world of duality, reaching for the light when we pass.
That is
I'm going to state the obvious.
yes, no, that's worth stating. We should state it. I'm going to state something contrary in a moment. But that is important and also true, right? So many levels of this. Um, Chantel, I'm going to just move people away from your question for a bit of a second. If anybody wants to just elaborate on or comment on an eclipse experience, that would also be welcome now. And then I'll maybe jump in with my 2 cents and we'll get moving with our plan. Anybody? No? Amazing. Well, I'll say, so first of all, let me say about the eclipse. I'll be perfectly honest. I had a lot of intentions to make it something very special. I'm interested in the science of it. Like I would love to have had the proper glasses to see it. And I also had an intention to make more of the day sort of a sacred time of reflection. Now I did actually set aside time when the eclipse was in its full force for us here, to be in prayer and meditation and in the forest. That did happen. What I noticed energetically that day and actually the day after was just an acceleration of energy. Now, I'm not even going to pretend I know what that means. I'm just going to tell you what I felt. I felt like I had a lot of coffee that day. And I hadn't. And I actually felt like I had a lot of coffee the next day, and I hadn't. So there was something uh, accelerating about it, something a little disorienting, and yet it had a brightness to it. Now, I'm just going to share that much. Now let's go to this question about the darkness at the end of the tunnel. The thing that's interesting about that, and you will notice this, Chantel, when you get to the chapter on the pure consciousness. Light is very often not just a metaphor, as Loretta reminded us, but a part of the direct perceptive experience in so many of the categories of spiritual experience. So in the first category, experiences of truth and beauty, there is a lightness that we feel and sometimes even perceive in those moments. You might say things just get brighter for a moment. In moments of ordinary magic, the second category, similarly, people will report in instances of extreme synchronicity or unexplained healing or those kinds of surprise and mysterious events that are part of ordinary magic. Again, a sense of energy coming in, a sense of brightness, sometimes even perceptively, that a situation or a person that shows up somehow was radiating a different kind of energy. Then we get to the spirit world. Now, this is a very interesting category to talk about light, because throughout time and history, in cultures around the world, the almost universal agreement is that if and when we want to contact divine beings, sacred beings, otherworldly beings, that should never be in the light, which is kind of an interesting thing if you think about it, right? We are very light focused in the Western world, and for obvious reasons, I just gave some of them. It works as a metaphor. It works as an emotional analogy, and there is this actual experience of lightness or light. But when it comes to the spirit world, very often it is darkness that is advised or recommended or even needed in order to empower our ability to see differently. Now, some have said that the darkness is about reducing the familiar senses, that we are as humans too visual, so that we need to remove that we're too much looking for cues in movement and behavior and color. And not only is that how we orient ourselves in the world, but think about this, it's also how we disorient ourselves. In other words, if we are constantly flooded with the familiar, it can be difficult to be open to the unfamiliar, to see that which is difficult to see when our world is filled with what we're expecting and looking for. A funny analogy that I was just thinking of earlier, it's a bit like when my son goes into the refrigerator. We might have put 15 things in there for him to eat, but when he opens that door, if he has one thing in mind and he doesn't see it, what does he say? There's nothing to eat in the refrigerator. And of course, we lose our minds. But the point is that we are conditioned to see what we're looking for. And that's harder when it comes to subtle dimensions of perception. Well, I could go on and on, but let me sort of summarize that as we go deeper into the spiritual realms, very often to perceive anything at all, including energy, darkness becomes the ally. Darkness becomes the vehicle. And interestingly, in experiences 4, cosmic self, 5, divine energy, and 6, formless spirit, light can still play a pretty significant role. In other words, divine energy is very often seeing colored light moving. Cosmic self might be interacting with energy forms. And even formless spirit, which typically starts moving us towards darkness and emptiness, sometimes it can feel like light or be described that way. But typically, when we look at mystical experiences and spiritual states, as we go deeper, I would say almost universally, it gets darker, not lighter. And that may be what's at the end of your tunnel. For me, the deeper truth of our reality is much more like a black hole than it is like the sun. Now, if you just pause for a moment, the black hole is this extraordinary, interdimensional mystery. I mean, we really can't even grasp what they are yet. And they are beyond time. They are beyond space. They are beyond materiality. And in that density, they consume all light. When you read the Tao, the Tao Te Ching, similarly, the original source, the mystery, exists before the light. Yin is, in fact, darkness. In fact, I believe the phrasing is darkness beyond darkness, or darkness within darkness. They describe the origin of things. Light is sort of what we might think of as the yang expression of spirit, the outgoing, things taking form, things coming to life. And the darkness is the original condition, mysterious, infinite, all-consuming, enveloping, the mother of all things. So, Chantel, if you don't mind me just playing on this, because I find this a very interesting reflection for all of us. An important one, actually, which is, and it's funny because it relates to the video I put in my newsletter just now. We have a perceptive bias and a narrative bias in the West, which means we expect, looked for, and value metaphors, images, and experiences of light more than we do darkness. And we almost assume that if there is darkness at the end of a tunnel, and this is a personal experience, this is not a judgment or disagreement. It could be whatever you say it is. I'm meaning anyone here. But I experience that darkness at the end not as a barrier to the light, but the truth of the light. The light is actually the radiant emergent quality from the infinite darkness that we interface with in this limited dimension. But in fact, when we go back and when we enter in those other realms, while it may feel like lightness, it is typical, experientially, it is typically darkness, that all things are consumed in the black hole of our beginning. So that's a pretty big reflection to start with. But I wanted to
you say that because when you say that, I did see the light. I was sucking to the light, but at the end of the day, that light is from darkness. So, so I went into that light, but then now I'm into the darkness. But it's just, why is it the light is behind the darkness? Maybe because, like I said, it's trying to see too much or whatever. But yeah, I guess yin and yang.
So maybe a way to finish the topic, and then we'll move into sort of the intended topic of the day. Someone asked me recently, like, what do I think is one of the biggest barriers to spiritual experiences? Well, I think there's all kinds of barriers, obviously, overthinking and attachment and control. But probably the biggest barrier I had to overcome was my reaction to my prejudices or my preconceived ideas of how spirit should show itself to me. In other words, what got scary at times in many of my own experiences was not understanding, right? What is this? What's happening to me? What is that thing I'm moving towards? What is this? And my choice, and I can't tell anyone else what to do, but my choice was to relax, to be curious, and to allow it to continue. And if I see now using Chantel's analogy, if I if I see this might be where most of you hang up. If I see a black hole at the end of my tunnel, and the possible option of some other light, I'm going into that hole. And because where does it take me? And what do I become in the darkness? And and what we realize on a metaphorical level and a psychological level is in the darkness we cease to be. When you're in a room without any light at all, there's no distinction between the sofa and the lamp that is out and the hand in front of our face. But that's much closer to the truth of our reality, which is all things are one, not just as one, but one. So let's pause there.
Thank
And
you.
what I'd like to do is maybe we'll have just a short prayer. The guided imageries tend to be a bit long. So I'd love to have just a prayerful moment that each person can join in whatever way makes sense to them. And then move right into this topic about relationships and spirituality. And I think I'll keep my comments short because we've just done a deep dive into dark and light. But I'm really curious to hear from the group today. I would love anyone and everyone to share your reactions and stories and analogies to the topic that I set up after we take a moment together. So, in honor of the topic of relationships, I'm going to invite you to close your eyes, take a few deep, relaxing breaths, kind of like a big inhale and a sigh, and a big inhale and a sigh. Allow yourself to slow down. Let all the thinking and analyzing and wondering settle out for a moment. Imagine with your next inhale that breath travels down into your heart, not just your physical heart, but your spiritual heart. So you breathe in and imagine that it's filling, you're feeding it with life force. Breathing out any weariness, tiredness, stuckness, resistance. Becoming a little more intentional with the breath, drawing in through the nose, big full breath. Hold it a moment, just noticing what's going on within you and around you, and then the long, extended exhale. And as you sense the quietness and the peace growing around you and within you, consider the same peace, the same darkness holds everyone hearing these words. That in a place, in a way, we are as together as we ever could be. When we open our hearts and minds in unison, we are together. We are even as one. And so each in our own way and together as one, we offer this moment of prayer to the one that is all, our source, our substance, the divine mystery from which we come and return to the vibrant heart of all things in this varied and complicated world, to the one that we call God, Spirit, consciousness, life. we say thank you. We feel gratitude for this journey as souls on earth. May we be grateful for each other, for whatever known or unknown we are bringing here today. We offer blessings and prayers of hope and health and healing for each one hearing these words. In our hearts, we know that we are lifted to that bright darkness that holds all things. And in this place, we see, we feel, we remember all the important relationships of our life right now. We take this moment to feel and see those whom we are struggling with, and we offer a blessing, a prayer. We offer love. Pray for the highest good, including ourselves, if we are struggling with ourselves. We offer love, forgiveness, acceptance, letting go. And to those whom we hold dear, and give thanks for the way they nourish us, the ease, the peace, the joy. We bless them as well. We give thanks for those relationships. We feel, remember, and give thanks for all the relationships of our lives, for they have shaped us. And the painful ones have brought us to the journey of healing and knowing wholeness fully. And the joyful ones have fed us and nourished us along that healing journey. A prayer for all relationships in our lives beyond those we know, relationships with the earth, with its creatures, with people everywhere and around the world. In this moment of feeling, knowing our interrelationship and connection, we fill those bridges, those cords, those connections with love and light. And for those who we may not know but struggle with in positions of power or leadership, we pray for them too, for their healing, for love in their hearts, that they may know the oneness that we know, the connection that we know, that they may live from that. And together, may we bring this world and all its relationships to a new level of learning, loving, helping, and growing. For our teachers of the past and our loved ones yet to come, we say thank you, we bless you, and in honor of all these prayers today, all these thoughts, all these feelings, and all that is unspoken for each person listening, we lift this energy and say Amen. So, spirituality is so often, especially in the modern world, connected to relationships. Once upon a time, it was maybe less intimate in the sense that the primary relationship was with divine beings, whether it was the spirit world or God itself. And then we, in dialogue with those divine beings, might pray for those that we are in relationship with, you know, praying that our, I don't know, mother would be more kind, or father would be more kind, or that our neighbor would be more quiet in the early morning, or whatever that might be. But over the last 100 years, spirituality has expanded in terms of what we consider it to be and what it includes. So spirituality is now firmly moving into an era of being both vertical, connecting with that which is above and beyond, and horizontal, helping us to be better people, better friends, better partners, better leaders, better lovers, whatever. And yet, despite all the growth and healing that we expect on the spiritual path now, it reminds me of something that an old business mentor of mine used to say. We would be in a consulting meeting with a potential new client, and they'd talk about all their problems and, can you guys help us? Do you think you can make a difference? Can you make this go away? Oh yeah, Mark would say. There's no question. There are remedies to these problems. There are solutions to these dynamics. We can address all your problems. And usually someone would make some kind of comment suggesting how relieved they will be to finally be free of these problems, whatever that might be. Some affirmation of why that's a good thing. To which he would always say, oh, you won't be free of problems. You'll just be free of these problems. And then you'll have new ones, right? You'll have the problems of a higher functioning team. You'll have the problems of a more successful organization. Problems or struggles are just a part of growth and evolution. So we don't get to live without them, but we do get to deal with them ideally more and more skillfully. And the analogy for me is that as we grow on the spiritual path, what we anticipate or hope for, most of us, I think, is that our relationships will become easier and more joyful and more beautiful and rewarding. Now, as they say, I'm not going to do all the talking here. I'm going to stop in a minute. That is actually not really the truth. Because if you, like I, live in a world full of people who don't understand your journey, who don't understand your language, who don't understand your metaphors, who don't share your commitment to growth or an ever-present willingness to self-analyze and resolve and create harmony, well, remarkably, your spiritual commitment may actually foster conflict. It may foster misunderstanding. It may foster hostility. It may foster othering, and not just from others, but in you as well. In fact, I'd say I have heard far more often over the years people say, God damn it, I wish I never started this spiritual journey because now it's just harder to meet people I really like. I love people more, I like people less. I'm finding it harder to be satisfied in a relationship. I'm finding it harder to go to dinner parties or to go out with friends because the things they're talking about I'm not interested in. And when I point it out, or I try to be challenging, or I just share what I'm interested in, it gets really quiet. Or people just want another drink. So, the spiritual journey can bring us to a deeper relationship with ourselves, absolutely, and a deeper relationship with the cosmos and the spiritual world, absolutely. But while it gives us tools and qualities to live with more peace in the human world, it very often creates more complexity, more misunderstanding, more breakdown. And I will conclude, I think I'm just going to wrap this up because I think it's enough said. I'll conclude with two things. Like the comment about the business development, these new problems do become new opportunities because the way we react to them becomes the new work. So how do we respond and react when people don't agree with us? How do we respond and react when people are, quote, narrow-minded? How do we respond and react? Because what you will notice is as those new relational problems arise, in some cases you will discover, wow, I'm okay with this. Boy, this work has really paid off. And in other cases, you will find that we become spiritually egoic. We become spiritually attached, become spiritually judging. And in the end, I don't know that's all that different than any other kind of judging or attachment. So there is a deeper work to do. Oh, the other thing I was going to tell you was more just a joke about myself, because I shared sort of a thought about this with someone the other day, and they said, "Oh," this was someone I work with in a business environment. We are having a casual conversation about spiritual growth, and I was sharing something like this. Well, you know, it's not all perfect. Doesn't make living with people all that much easier. And they said, "Oh, I'm sure it's not easy living with you." And I was like, what? Wait a second. What does that mean? You know? And they said, oh, I can only imagine you going out for dinner with you and philosophizing about where the fish came from. And, you know, is the lettuce organic? And is that really ethical? And we all have to stop and pray. And I was like, well, I think all those things. I don't impose them. But so maybe they weren't wrong. So I'd love to hear, open up the floor and go back to our gallery of friends. And I'd love to hear from anyone around how your spiritual journey, and admittedly, we have a good bit of time here. So if you keep your comments short, we can get more people in, or you can continue after a bit. I'd love to hear stories, analogies, examples, personal experiences of either how spirituality has enriched your relationships. Do you have an example? Or how it's complicated your relationships? Maybe you have an example. Jan, let's go.
I come from a family of evangelical Christians,
Oh, that's gonna
and
work.
and my spiritual evolution and growth has taken me to a different place that they don't understand. I understand where they are because I used to be there. But their only response to me is, I'm sorry you won't be with us in heaven, and you're the only one in our family who won't be there, and you're hurting us terribly, and will you please come back to the fold?
Do they still say that?
They still say that.
Oh, Lord. How long
So
has it been like? How long
this
has
is
it been like that?
going, what?
How many years has it been like that?
40, maybe 50.
And so, and how have you handled it? Because you have a smile on your face.
I mostly have no contact with them, but
Okay.
I miss them.
Yeah.
And it's come up for me today because yesterday I went to a memorial service for a dear friend my age who died of pancreatic cancer, and he's in Canada. I went by Zoom to his memorial service, and it was in a Mennonite church, and everybody there are Mennonites, and his kids are Mennonites, and his grandkids, and I'm just not part of that world. But to them, I'm just a weirdo. And they're trying. I mean, when they used to visit me, they would leave those tracks, the little pamphlets that tell you about coming to Christ. They used to leave those on the dining table as they left visiting, still trying to get me back. I mean, they're really, really concerned and praying for me.
So you never really found the ability to be around it. And so I'm going to ask you a question because maybe this is relevant for others. I think you've shared something powerful, and I'm sorry, because a lot of people have lost family because of spiritual growth. Aside from the grief of losing family, do you feel like you had to separate yourself ultimately because it was too painful for you, or more something else, that it was just like you could love and accept them like that, but it was more just the difficulty for them, that they just kept trying, and you could never just have it was just unworkable.
And because I don't feel seen by them, I don't feel accepted for who I am. So it's always a rejection of me to be with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
The exception for this was my mother. In the beginning, my mother and I had disagreements, and then my mother said, my relationship with you is so important that let's just not ever talk about religion again, because we'll never agree. And let's just not talk about that subject and just love each other. So it was wonderful with my mother, who's no longer with us, but her sisters never got there. Her sisters are still alive, and they would still like me to be saved.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. And you know, it's the truth, and that's why we're talking about it, because you're not alone. It happens all the time, all over the world. It's sad.
Yeah.
I wonder if someone else would like to respond either to Jan or something I said, or share your own analogy. Loretta, please.
I have a similar situation, but it's different in that they don't reject me. They ignore it and they think I'm a weirdo.
Huh.
But then every once in a while they'll say, I don't know what you do, but would you pray for my friend who's going in for a procedure?
They,
It's
you.
like that my brother will ask me to pray for his friend, or he'll say, I don't know, it's like they don't understand my spirituality, but there's not the rejection. But the reason that I raised my hand is because my mother, who was very Catholic, and, some of the stuff I do was evil. And I pointed out to her, I said, Mom, you know who I am, and you know that I'm not evil. So isn't it possible that that's not evil if I do it? And it confused her enough that she dropped the subject. But what we did was what Jan did with her mom. We didn't say we'll ignore it, but we always rose above the discussion and just came to the place where we love each other more than anybody else in the world. And so we just meet at that place, and she's 99 now, and we continue to meet at that place. And we don't have, I mean, occasionally, she'll have a question or something will come up, or she'll just ignore it. I'll tell her I worked a fair and I was reading tarot cards, and she just skips by it and just wants to know, did I have fun, or did I have a good weekend, or did I meet anybody, or whatever it might be. So she's gotten to the point where she can ignore it. But most of my family just thinks that I'm weird.
Loretta, you shared something that is actually one of my favorite lessons about relationships, and I was just writing this down. So there's you and me, right? And interestingly, where most relationship breakdown is right here in the transactional comparison between what I need and want and what you need and want. And even in loving relationships where people like each other, because you can use this in conflict environments as well. This is still hard, right? It's because like, oh, well, we both want a vacation, but you want a city and I want the country, or you want to see family and I don't want to see any family, or it's like that. And the secret for so many of these relational dynamics is to find the higher point of convergence. Is there an us that we're here to protect? Is there a loving place where that unites us? And yeah, when it comes to spirituality and families, this is very often the only resolution point, which is, and it's a cliche, but it's often true. A Christian family, and they grew up Catholic, but one set sort of went off, and now they're Seventh-day Adventists, and no one understands what that is. And then the other one now does yoga and never goes to church, and then another one's, I don't know, whatever, married a Lutheran, and no one knows who's going to hell. But the choice is to either stay at that transactional level and be suspicious, or it's Thanksgiving and let's just agree that we're going to focus on what we love about each other and how happy we are to be together. And we'll leave each other's decisions and journeys for each person to account for.
And perhaps the difference is that to my family, that aspect is not as important as it maybe is to Jan's family.
Correct. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's what makes every family different. And some families cannot get beyond that.
Right.
And sadly, I would say, this is my opinion, while personalities have an effect, culture and conditioning is a huge part of it, because some people have been acculturated more deeply to be more fearful of just making a spiritual mistake. And as Jan shared, they love Jan enough that they want Jan to come to the other side. But for those of us that don't share that worldview, that's very painful and weird. David, I noticed you were nodding your head. Would you like to share anything? You're good. Okay. Sally, how about you? Do you feel like coming on and sharing something with the group? You don't have to, but
Well, spirituality is something that I share with a group of friends I have that I've basically remade since I just finished a relationship. So I've left a lot of pseudo friends because it just, support me and help me in my journey at this point right now. So I haven't been, relating with the people who aren't just kind of part of my clan. So I don't know. I'm in a divorce situation. I just got divorced and it just became final. And so I left friends in two places, and I'm just starting over. And so I'm just choosing new friends who have a similar viewpoint, have similar spirituality. So I find it difficult. I find it difficult to relate to people who want to argue about it, and I don't argue. I don't even want to discuss whether people want to argue, but because there are people in my family, in my network that would argue, but it's just sort of, I found I have to go beyond. I just have to leave others who can't support me. And I don't really feel that, I want to leave all of them, some of my family, I'd like to support them more, and I'd like them to support me. But until, I've had problems with boundaries, and until I, find that I'm being treated kindly and supported, I have to be with the people that, help me out. That's just my life right now. Thank you for asking. And I thought meditation was so beautiful and so needed for me today. I really, really hit home. It was an amazing. I felt like, wow, I can't believe I found this today, and I so needed that, because it was just perfect for what I was going through today. And I'm just not saying it to be, I just honestly, the prayers of having, saying goodbye to a long-term relationship, and it's been experience.
Yeah. Well,
So
thank you. And thank you for your honesty. And I'll say I'm sorry for this transition, because it's always painful, no matter how it goes or who wants it or doesn't want it, whatever. It's terrible. It's terrible. No one really gets married to get divorced. On the other hand, knowing as much of you as I do now, and that's a bit, your journey needs a new container, and you're going to find it. And you shared something really important I want to kind of reiterate for the group, and then we could squeeze in maybe a couple more quick comments before the hour runs out. But the significance of taking the time you need to be supported before exposing yourself to those that are not supportive is so wise. It doesn't mean, I'm saying this to everyone, that we should all always insulate ourselves. I don't think that's true or healthy. But we all go through phases where we don't have enough energy to resist, deal with, moderate, manage those that are not going in the same direction. And in those moments, we need to surround ourselves with like-minded and like-hearted people, and then grow again and restore again and build the muscle of soul and self so that we can eventually go back to those environments and not really care if people, agree or not. So take your time. And I'm saying that to you, and I'm saying that to everyone. Chantel, I see your hand is up, but I'm going to just, because we got you at the beginning, before we go to you, I'm going to see if there's anyone who hasn't spoken that wants to interject. And Chris, I want to say hello, shout out to Chris. Haven't seen you in a bit, but we're glad you're here. Is there anybody that has another question or comment or story? Everyone's ready for Chantel. All right, Chantel.
Well, it's a comment in a book that I'm reading that I suggested to you last week about perfect love in
Oh, yeah,
imperfect
yeah.
relationship. And I was reading about absolute love or relative love. And the relative love, it made me think again about the light and darkness. But is it all right? I read just a little paragraph of what it says about relative love and relationship. That eye-opening for me.
There's no better way to close a class than a little reading
All
and
right.
a few words to say goodbye. So let's just do it like that. I love it. And it looks like a great book. So I feel
Yes.
ready. Please do.
So, love's natural openness, which we can taste in brief, blissful moment of pure connection with another person, rarely permeate our relationship completely. Indeed, the more two people open to each other, the more this wide openness also bring to the surface all the obstacle to it, their deepest, darkest wounds, their desperation and mistrust, and their rawest emotional trigger point, just as the sun warms cause cloud to arise by prompting the earth to release its moisture, so love's pure openness, I would call it the light, activate the thick clouds of our emotional wounding, the tight places where we are shut down, where we live in fear and resist love. So, and they said that love as a healing power can operate only on what presents itself to be ill. As long as our wounding remain hidden, it can only fester. And then it continues on saying that there is always a continual play of light and shadow, like the eclipse. So I
Boy, oh
thought,
boy, I would love you to, if you could take a phone snapshot of that paragraph. I'll take it.
yeah,
That's nice. That's nice, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful way to end, because I think that the analogy that I'd like to share sort of in closing is that as we grow on the spiritual path, it's a way of falling in love with the world. And that what you read is the irony that is present both in romantic relationships and in our love of the world, which is that the more we want to know the world, the more we want to hear more stories and don't want to live in a bubble of only people that think about us, the more we are willing to see and consider it all. The truth is we see more injustice and we hear more ignorance and we feel more pain. Loving the world is a painful endeavor. And yet, as the passage shares, and yet that's the work here. That's the work, I believe, on this planet, which is to find the wounds and the resistance and to see what they reveal. And one by one, bring love to each and bring light to each, and recognize that in some cases, that with which we struggle will be a partner to us. And they'll want to talk. They'll want to be in dialogue, the neighbor, the family member, the member of the oppositional group. And in many cases, they don't want to hear from us. And we do the work on our own. And we love and bless them, and we keep going. Very nice. Well, it's a big topic. Now, next week, I will be unavailable. I'm going to announce this right now. Garth, I will be in touch with, but we are going to host a group, and I will have a facilitator who will be showing up. Maybe it's going to be a surprise. I don't know if I should tell you. Should I tell you? Yes. All right. Well, I'm going to tell you because the facilitator just gave me the nod. Joni, who actually, I don't know if any of you know this, Joni wrote the foreword to my book and was really my first big reader for the book. Joni has facilitated many small group sessions, and in particular around spiritual books. So Joni will be hosting our session and facilitating a fabulous conversation based on what we've talked about together, but also the things that it has inspired in her. Joni, is there anything you want to say before we close for today?
Yeah, thanks. I would like to jump in. This will only take a minute. But I'm so excited. I hope everyone returns next week to join me. What I plan to do is begin the circle by offering an invitation that I use when I take people on a forest bathing walk. Like most guided meditations, it's about opening a space to slow down, become grounded, and perhaps a bit more directed to open one's senses. So, what may also be different will be intentionally being in relationship with another nature being. So, think about this for next week. If you have a data plan, you could be outdoors or on your patio with your Wi-Fi, or sitting inside with a view out your window of water, trees, sky, or also just sitting, in your study with a nature being that you've brought inside your home, such as a feather, a stone, a stick, a plant. And then afterwards, we will share what we are noticing, and then we'll transition into a discussion of one aspect, topic, or question that I posed from Jonathan's extraordinary new book.
Well, thank you, Joni, and I look forward to hearing how it goes. We'll see you all in 2 weeks, and I hope you see each other next week.
Yeah.
Thank you
Sounds
for all
good. Thank you for saying hello, Jonathan.
Thank you,
Everybody,
Chris.
take
Thank
care.
you,
Have a
everyone.
beautiful day.
Thank you.
Lots of love.
Thank you.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you, Garth.
Bye.
Bye-bye.